outline of my presentation is as put up there. I'm going to be talking about standards in the petroleum sector. I'm going to talk about regulations. I shall talk about license conditions that apply to licensees. And I'm going to talk about conformance assessment mechanisms and methodologies that we use. I will talk about monitoring of the sector and enforcement. And I also touch on a few commonly asked questions by members of the public, by licensees, the motorists, by various interested parties in this sector. Talking about standards, okay, I'll start to my discussion with a sharing of infrastructure standards. Petroleum undertakings are constructed, erected, operated in line with the national standards that are developed by key stakeholders through the Standards Association of Zimbabwe. And we do have a number of infrastructure standards. These infrastructure standards are basically guidelines that assist operators on infrastructural requirements for safe operation, for environmental protection, for quality assurance even. So there are set guidelines that licensees or operators or anyone who is working in the industry is obliged to conform to. We do have standards for service stations, which clearly set out and lays out what a good service station is like. If you go to the Standards Association of Zimbabwe and you want to put up a service station, they can actually sell you the standards booklet for service station, for the construction of service stations. You can also access the standard for the construction of the barrier of underground tanks and the associated pipework and dispensers. There's a particular way that those activities should be done, and those issues are articulated in various standards. We do have standards for tanks. You don't just get any tank and start filling fuel, you need to start burying it. There are various issues that involve corrosion protection, leakage protection, leakage detection, and a number of other aspects, including ventilation, all to assure integrity of the product as well as safety. So these issues are well defined in various standards. So the one standard for tanks is 913 of 2012. We do have a standard for the storage and handling of small amounts of flammable substances. This is a standard that also covers jerrycans, portable containers that are used by various end users of fuel products. This standard was published in 1972, and it is actually currently undergoing review. I think in a few months we'll have an updated standard, but at the moment we are using standard 341 of 1972. We also have guidelines for LPG. There's that standard there, number 960, ZWS 960 of 2012, on the handling, storage and distribution and maintenance of LPG sites. We've completed the development of transportation standards. We do have two standards for the guidance of people in the transportation of fuel business. We do have a standard for motor vehicles, for road tankers. The hose itself in the tank, their design specifications, they are clearly laid out. If you want to buy a road tanker for the carriage of fuel, you are guided by that standard. If you want to maintain it properly, you are guided by that standard. If you want to go for tender, you want to tender for 100 trucks for carriage of fuel, you go to that standard, and that standard is available at sites. We developed it. There's also an associated standard for transportation, which is for the operation procedures, how to operate a road tanker for fuel. It is another standard. I think that is 995. 994 is for the design specifications. 995 is for the operation. So those are some of the infrastructure standards that we use, and these are very key in our activities as we regulate the fuel sector, particularly from a technical point of view. We're talking about the fuel supply chain, the infrastructure that is used, the tanks, the pipes, the motor vehicles, and as well as the operating practices that various licensees are obliged to observe. So we are guided by those standards. And these standards are available in the Standards Association of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe head office in Borodale for a small fee. In terms of fuel quality, we also do have a set of standards that guide the quality of fuel that is acceptable for sale in Zimbabwe. There are a host of them. I think for each fuel type, there is a standard that gives guidelines on what that fuel should be. This removes the doubt, this removes the debate on what a good fuel is, what an acceptable fuel is. It also helps to tell whether a fuel has been tampered with or not, because there are specific parameters that are defined for each fuel. That this fuel must meet this, and if it is diesel, it must meet this and that and that and that parameter. If it is petrol, it must meet this and that parameter. So we do have standards for each type of fuel that we use. So we have standards for ethanol, as it is produced in the raw world there. It has to meet a certain acceptable standard for us to accept it for blending. We do have standards for biodiesel as well. We do have standards for mineral diesel. We have standards for unleaded petrol. Even for the blends themselves, after blending, the product must meet certain guidelines, certain parameters for it to be in specification. Otherwise, it will not be acceptable for use. So these standards actually are guidelines for monitoring, they are guidelines for accepting is fit for purpose in the various petroleum products. We also have standards for LPG even. We've had complaints about the quality of LPG not being satisfactory. We have a standard against which we use to test and verify whether certain LPG products are acceptable or not. So the standard for LPG is ZWS 965 for LPG. And also for paraffin, illuminated paraffin, we do have a standard. So these standards are basically basis for acceptance, basis for approval, basis for checking, basis for monitoring, and they also help to protect members of the public by giving them that assurance that the product that they are using meets national and even international standards. These standards, by their nature, are voluntary guidelines. The standards associated with Zimbabwe, in liaison with interested parties or stakeholders, they sit down and develop standards. Standards for infrastructure, standards for quality. But by and large, these standards are basically guidelines for best practice. They are not mandatory. However, ourselves as a regulator, we can make them mandatory, and we do make them mandatory when we cite them in regulations. We do have rules and regulations. By referencing these standards in rules and regulations, we make those standards mandatory. They are no longer optional. If you are saying the quality of blend to be sold in Zimbabwe shall meet standards ZWS number 965, we are actually saying that it is mandatory. It's now compulsory. If the licensees are compelled to meet that standard. But if it is not listed in the regulation, it still remains optional. It was only a guide for best practice. So we do have a number of regulations which are founded on our principal acts. The first one being the Energy Regulatory Authority Act itself, and then the Petroleum Act of 2006. It gives the Minister of Energy and Power Development the power to set up regulations. And these are some of the regulations that we have. And these regulations, by and large, are referring to the standards that I was talking about. The standards for which the licensees are obliged now to abide by. So we do have standards for fuel quality, which are actually saying that any fuel product that is sold in Zimbabwe, that is imported into Zimbabwe, shall meet those SARS standards. It is an offense not to meet those SARS standards. So if you're a licensee, if you are to be compliant, you are obliged to follow the fuel quality regulations. That's one example, SIA 23 of 2018. We do have mandatory blending regulations. These are also obligating licensees to blend unleaded petrol with ethanol according to the SARS standards. You don't just blend anyhow. You cannot blend at a service station, you cannot blend at your factory, you cannot blend at home. You blend at licensed facilities that have been inspected, that has been approved, that that actually, whose facilities meet SARS standards, and whose product as well has been checked to meet the SARS standards I referred to earlier on. So there's lots of talk that people do blame. We do carry out inspections in the field, we do monitor, and anyone found carrying out those activities without a license, that will be an offense and they are prosecuted. For the LPG industry, we do have a regulation which is called SI 57 of 2014. It lays out the expected behavior in the LPG industry. It also stipulates the standards that have to be followed for both infrastructure and for quality. We do have petroleum pricing regulations as well. These I will not talk much about, but our economic regulation department do manage and supervise and operationalize those petroleum pricing regulations. We have recently finished drafting petroleum inspection and licensing regulations. These are waiting to be gazetted at the Ministry of Justice, and we are in the process of drafting transportation regulations, which shall be referring to those two regulations that I talked about for vehicles and for their operation, as far as they are required to carry petroleum products. Then going forward, now we regulate the industry. Coming from the standards, coming from the regulations, we develop license conditions for operators. That's from a technical point of view. There are others, there are the conditions that licensees and operators have to conform to from economic regulation aspect. But I will be talking about those that concern technical regulation. I've just listed a few of them here. This is actually coming from either from the regulation or from any one of the standards. It is a requirement that anyone operating in the industry should have suitable facilities. We do not briefcase business people, we do not backyard operators. So anyone interested in running a petroleum undertaking in the country must operate from suitable facilities that are approved by SERA. That is a license condition derived from the regulations, derived from the standards. The installation of that premises must comply with SARS standards. It is a requirement in terms of the regulations that the licensee or the operator shall give free access to SERA inspectors to come into the premises to carry out inspections in terms of the regulations, in terms of the SARS standards. Operators are obliged to have their equipment calibrated. Basically, these are your tanks as well as your dispensing pumps. They must be calibrated by the Ministry of Industry and Commerce through the Trade Measures Department. This is to assure you that when you are buying 1 liter of fuel, it is indeed 1 liter of fuel. It is not 950, it is not 900 milliliters. So this calibration is a requirement that any licensee, any sector should have their equipment properly calibrated. It should have valid calibration certificates. It should have calibration seals. And part of the inspection process is to inspect for the presence of those calibration certificates, for the presence of those calibration seals. So that is a license condition, as I said, derived also from the regulations. It is a requirement that operators should display the type and the price of fuel on offer. They should have correct firefighting equipment on site for safety. There are the issues that I have mentioned up. There should also be proper drainage facilities. If there's a spillage on site, that spillage must be handled and managed in a way that it doesn't, there's no environmental damage that results. It is a crucial condition that fuel operators sell fuel that meets quality requirements. That's coming from SI 23. And it is also a requirement that fuel operators and licensees employ trained people. SERA offers training for fuel operators, and some major operators also do have approved training that they give to their staff. So during inspection exercises and programs, SERA actually inquires if operators are trained. We ask for training records and is verification of training. So it is a requirement that those guys who are in the industry, they know what what product they are dealing with. There's product knowledge, there's feeding procedures, there are works procedures, there are emergency procedures that are critical for the safe operation of the industry that all operators must be trained and must be aware of. Okay. There are a number of conformance assessment mechanisms that we carry out. How do we assure conformance? How do we assure compliance? So for both infrastructure and for both quality, there are a number of activities that we carry out to ensure that there is conformance, to ensure that there is compliance to the standards and to the regulations. So we do carry out pre-licensing inspections, we do carry out routine inspections, and from time to time, we carry out accident and incident investigations. It is a requirement in our laws that any accident that happens at a petroleum undertaking be reported within 48 hours. So not reporting an accident is an offense in terms of the law. And if you report that accident, ZERA sends inspectors to investigate that accident, to find what the root causes of that accident were. We also carry out, or we participate in the environmental impact assessment reviews. From time to time, consultants from EMA come, they inquire us on our opinion, on our views on petroleum undertakings that will be proposed for construction in various areas. So we also give our advice and our guidance in as far as the standards that we expect the proposed facility to meet. That's as far as infrastructure is concerned. On the right there, we also have a fuel quality conformance assessment mechanisms. The first one is fuel sampling and testing. According to our client service charter, our stakeholder service charter, we endeavor to take samples from each and every service station in the country at least once a year to assess their fuel. That's on a planned basis. But where we have particularly certain problems or certain hotspots, we focus our tests in those areas. So we do take samples in the field. We've got a mobile fuel quality testing laboratory. We test against a number of parameters. If the fuel is okay, that's good and fine. If it's not, we actually shut down the facility and cause prosecution. We do investigate quality incidents and quality complaints. We do have a toll-free number that motorists can raise us on if they've got complaints on the quality in the sector. We normally do have lots of these during the rain seasons, people getting water in their fuel. In the dry season, normally it dies down. But we then use the feedback from the complaints, from the investigations, to train, to focus our inspections on particular aspects of infrastructure that may be deficient. As far as quality is concerned, we also review certificates of analysis. As fuel is coming in, it is accompanied by various documentations which demonstrate its quality at source. We also try to check if the fuel is it has moved in the value chain, in the supply chain. Does it still maintain the quality that it had at source? By reviewing the quality certificates that comes with it, by also comparing figures on the quality certificates with the values that we get as we do field sampling and field testing. We do a lot of research and advisory work in terms of quality, product quality. We work a lot with the African Refiners Association, with various SADC offices and working groups on the petroleum and the gas sector, where we are developing standards. So we do a lot of research, we do a lot of benchmarking in a bid to comply with various timelines and guidelines that are given by the region for conformance or for improving the quality of fuel over the long term. There I'm presenting to you the number of fuel licenses that we've issued from 2012 to date. We see there's been an increasing trend of more and more operators coming under our purview. Once someone is licensed, they are now, we start monitoring them. So we try to get as many people as possible to be licensed, because it is an offense to operate without a license. So we've been trying to capture everyone. Anyone who's operating in the country should be having their license. So we've seen a rapid increase in licenses from the time we were formed in 2012 up to now. There's a steady increase in the compliance. The same picture applies to LPG as well. From a poultry 53 licenses in 2015, we are now above 150 licenses. So again, we are getting more and more people licensed. Actually, 151 was for 2018. The 2019 figures we are working out. They should be out soon. Routine inspections, I talked about routine inspections. This is where our inspectors go into the field to actually carry out inspections, to check compliance of sites against standards, and give compliance orders for those sites that will not be compliant. Sometimes to even close certain facilities that will be too dangerous, that will be unsafe. So the Petroleum Act in Section 55 gives us the power to summarily close or shut off a facility that does not meet standards. So we do routine inspections in the field. In terms of the inspections that we've carried out to date, again, a steady increase from 2015 to 2018, even up to 2019. I think if you project it, would be well above 600 inspections per year. Again, in terms of our service charter, we endeavor to carry out a physical inspection of every petroleum undertaking in the country against petroleum standards. So it is one of our KPIs to make sure that every service station in the country has been visited, has been assessed, has been inspected, to make sure that it is compliant to the safety requirements, to the operational requirements, and in general to the Standards Association of Zimbabwe standards. The service stations that we've visited, that is their compliance rate or their compliance level. By compliance level here, we are talking about the extent to which they meet standards. Our minimum expectation for the fuel industry is 70%. If a site meets the standards is itemized, we've got a checklist which itemizes key requirements of the standard, and we score each of the requirements. The minimum score acceptable for licensing is 70%. And that has been the trend, increasing gradually from 2015 with a dip in 2016. In 2016, we did a special exercise that we carried out with a massive blitz that we carried out in the Eastern Islands when we did fuel smuggling from Mozambique. And most of that fuel was being sold in unsuitable facilities. That's why our compliance went down, because with more and more sites that were below the 70% mark. But by and large, from 2016 up to now, we see a gradual increase in compliance. More and more sites are able to meet the standards for infrastructure required by SARS and by the industry. In terms of fuel quality, I mentioned earlier on that we do have a mobile van, that the white van parked to the end there, which we drive along. We carry out planned and unplanned visits to sites. We take samples, we test in terms of the standard, we get results. If the results are failed, we prosecute. Most of the time, we actually close the facility and cause it to be prosecuted. Our results from that van are almost instantaneous. On site, within 10-15 minutes, we actually get to know the status of the quality of that fuel. So it is a very useful machine that we have there. The parameters of interest, I've listed there a few of the parameters of interest that we test for quality of fuel in the field. So for petrol, for example, we are keen to know the ethanol content. It is a requirement that unleaded petrol be blended with ethanol. So we test for blending levels. Are you blending in terms of the current mandate? From time to time, the Minister of Energy announces an ethanol mandate to say right now we are blending at 5%. It could be 10%, it could be 15%, up to 20%, depending on ethanol availability. So we also do follow-ups in the market to see the levels at which operators, the fuel that is being sold is blended. We look at distillation profile. There's a parameter which we call distillation profile, which actually shows us the characteristic or the nature of the product. tells us, it helps us to distinguish what kind of petroleum product it is. The density, we monitor that. The rate, vapor pressure, or the volatility of the fuel, we monitor that. We also monitor water content, and we also monitor its PHE. For diesel, we look at flash points. We are looking at sulfur content, density, distillation profile again. Water content is of interest as well. Then for LPG, at the moment we are only testing one parameter, which is called vapor pressure. We are working to get a density meter, which we shall be using to measure also the density of LPG as well. But these are some of the key parameters. There are many other parameters that our laboratory can test, but these are parameters that at short time we can actually get to know the quality of a product, and to help us to accept or to reject any product. And these are some of the results of our tests. Actually, they are the results of our tests from 2014 to date. Those are the number of samples we have tested so far, and those are the compliance rates. By compliance rate in this case, we are saying how many samples passed, how many samples we tested, how many failed. That's giving our compliance rate. As you can see also, the rate has been increasing. Save for that period again, 2016-2017 that I talked about. The compliance dipped a little bit. The majority of samples, they were failing because they were selling fuel that was not blended. The smuggled fuel from Mozambique tested was found without ethanol against statutory instrument. So that's why our compliance went a little bit down 2016-2017, but it has picked up to 2019, acceptable. We do carry out a lot of enforcement work with the partners. We work with the Fire Brigade, we work with the ZRP Police, we work with EMA to enforce the regulations in the field. So there we've got a police officer assisting at an illegal LPG filling facility. On the right, we've got members of the Fire Brigade assisting in assessing that bulk LPG facility. Resulting from the enforcement work and the monitoring work, eventually they also come to prosecution. Those guys found not compliant are prosecuted. And that is a table of, or a record of prosecutions carried out from 2015 to half year this year. A number of them, I think the majority of them were those who were caught for, operating without licenses. Those are the majority of offenders. We carried out accident investigations in terms of the standards as well, because we believe accidents don't happen, accidents are caused, and we want to understand those causes. What caused the accident? And from the causes of the accident, we also develop learnings which will help us to develop the standards further. Sometimes from those learnings, we actually sit down and talk to SARS and other stakeholders to refine standards, to say, if we are to prevent accidents of this nature, the standard must say this and that. The operating procedures must be amended like this and like this to prevent recurrence of accidents. So we are very keen. Any petroleum accidents that happen in the country, we endeavor to attend every accident because they are very critical learnings that we derive from there. And like I said earlier on, it is a requirement, it is a statutory requirement to report accidents. Not reporting accidents is an offense for both the gas and the petrol. From the enforcement work that we carry out and from the inspections and monitoring that we carry out, we do, like I said earlier on, get learnings. And one of the issues that comes up is ignorance of standards. As we are carrying out monitoring activities, as we are carrying out inspections, as we are enforcing, we come across people who say, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even know there's a standard for this. I don't even know that vent pipes for service stations should not be under the canopy. I don't know that vent pipes for a service station should not be the neighbor's property. There are so many issues of ignorance that arise when we're carrying out inspections. And from this now we develop training programs, and we require that operators and even owners and proprietors of business attend appreciation trainings. So we do arrange and we do run standards awareness trainings. This actually helps to improve compliance. We now have operators who are knowledgeable about the processes operators who are knowledgeable about the product, even the proprietors, the owners, because we've had cases where operators know the standard requirements, but owners of businesses don't know. And when the inspector gets onto site, he's told, yes, I've told the boss, but the boss doesn't appreciate. And he's saying, so we've no option in those cases but to close for non-compliance. But it's not our wish to close operators. It is our wish to educate, to get a willing compliance from our operators. So we try to train and raise awareness of the standards and awareness of regulations. And there I'm presenting a record of our trainings from 2014 to date. I think we've done a lot of work in LPG because of the hazards and the dangers associated with LPG. We've done a lot of training countrywide for LPG fillers, those guys who fill LPG, to the extent that while the proprietor may not have licensed their facility, but you find that the person they are employing will be trained. The person that they're employing knows what LPG is, knows the hazards and dangers of LPG. So to us, that is a big achievement. And we think it has also contributed in reducing the levels of accidents, the number of accidents that we've had in the LPG industries. Yes, we've had accidents, most of them actually from end users. That's something that I'll talk about later. But we've not had many accidents at licensees, and even at filling facilities, because the operators, most of them have been trained. We've trained fillers. We also train service station operators. We've trained not as many service station operators because the majority of them do undergo in-house training by their companies. So you find that the major oil companies do have in-house programs which are actually acceptable to us. We've looked at those training programs. They meet all the requirements. They touch all the essential elements of the petroleum standard. So we are happy with their in-house trainings. This is why our focus is on those independent and freestanding LPG operators who do not have any other source of knowledge. So we try to fill up that gap. We also engage consumers and educate them on the standards for safe use of petroleum products. And in that regard, I think to date we've done 15,300 consumers across the country. We've been to Bayat Bridge, we've been to Chirezi, we've been to Tare, Shingo, Plumtree, Gwanda. We've been all over engaging the consumers at household level, educating them on the dangers of petroleum products, particularly LPG. We also participate in agricultural shows where we demonstrate safe use of the product to minimize and reduce the incidences of accidents. Having said that, I would like to quickly move over to some frequently asked questions. I think we do get lots of questions in the licensing process.